Thanks for coming back to, well, it's actually into a new place now. I think the first time that we met was in November of 2000, which, that goes back to the earlier days. Actually, I think Ridge was the very first winery dinner that we had done.
That's excellent. Yeah, no, it's beautiful. Great digs here.
Thank you.
Really like it.
Thanks. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, we lucked out and had a really beautiful day today, so lots of people came in to taste through these wines, so we've got some stained labels here. But I'd like to talk just a little bit about the Santa Cruz designation. So Ridge is very well known for the Zinfandels, but really some of the most spectacular wines that come out of the winery are these Santa Cruz designations. And I noticed that the labels look a little bit different now. They're sort of spelling it out for us, making it a little bit easier. So maybe we could just talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So Ridge actually had its start in the Santa Cruz Mountains outside of a town called Cupertino, which we all know is the home of Apple computers as well. But back in the day, these 4 Stanford Research Institute colleagues got together, pooled their money, and bought this property with the intention of it just being a weekend getaway during, then they would go up on the weekends and refurbish this old winery. And of course, being scientists, they couldn't help but get their hands dirty and make wine. And so what was planted around there were Cabernet vines as well as some Chardonnay. And so Cabernet really is truly the heart and soul of Ridge. The first vintage was 1959, and they found out quickly that they had something very special. So where we're located 40 miles south of San Francisco, about 15 miles in from the Pacific Ocean, limestone soils between around 1,600 and 2,700 feet above sea level, so very cool climate. So it kind of makes for an old world style, very cool. And the limestone, you get something that is unlike anything else in California. So yeah, sometimes people are really shocked that we make Cabernet, and even more shocked that we make Chardonnay. But Cabernet is truly where it all began.
Well, the Montebello Cabernet that you shared with us tonight from the 1988 vintage.
Yes.
I think that wine shows that it definitely has some cellarability.
Yes.
So the 2007, a little bit different composition, looked like about 10% less Cabernet Sauvignon. So when you make the Montebello, it's not just that it's Cabernet Sauvignon, but it's really the best wine that you can make with the given vintage with the Bordeaux varietals, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. And if you look back at what was planted at Montebello, the first many years it was 100% Cabernet, and we started to slowly plant Merlot, and then of course Cabernet Franc and Petit Verdot. And so the way that we produce, and I should say put together the Montebello, as well as the Santa Cruz Mountains estate, it's all block by block. And so some blocks make it some years and some blocks don't. And so the composition changes from year to year. And we use that same approach to the Zinfandels. And that's why Geyserville and Lytton Springs will also be very different in composition. For us, it's all about site specificity. It's about the characteristics, what the vineyard is trying to show. And we use that philosophy that we gained from Montebello, learning the Montebello vineyard, and applying that to the Zinfandel vineyards as well.
So Paul Draper's approach has worked very nicely for all this time. So it's interesting. Are all 5 of the Bordeaux varietals grown in? No.
All but Malbec.
All but Malbec.
Yes.
So it seems to be doing just fine on its own.
On its own, elsewhere.
Yeah. It's to see the Burgundian white.
Yes.
The Bordeaux red.
I know.
Off the same side, it's kind of interesting. But I agree with you about the expression from the limestone. In the Chardonnay in particular, it does have a very old world sensibility, but it's very much it's California fruit. You can tell it's California fruit.
It is.
But it really has some of those extra components without being just too opulent and too
absolutely.
Too heavy. Yeah, really, very, very nice. So you make the Santa Cruz Chardonnay and the Santa Cruz, which is now on the 07. It's called, on the 08.
It's called Estate.
It's just called Estate.
Right. Okay. And the 09 Chardonnay, Santa Cruz Mountains Estate, is now just going to be Estate.
Okay.
And we did that for a couple of reasons. I mean, you can see on the label, it's like Santa Cruz Mountains. It's a lot to see and read. But it was also very confusing for people. It's always come from Montebello. It's always come from that vineyard. But people are like, Santa Cruz. Well, Santa Cruz is like, an hour away. And then Santa Cruz Mountains, well, that was just too vague. And so what we've done is it'll just say estate. And then, of course, Santa Cruz Mountains, because it is an AVA, we kept that on the label, and it says Cabernet Sauvignon because there is actually 75% in the 08 vintage. So it's very, very simple, which is nice.
It is simple, and I would say I've been selling wine for over 20 years. Not much over 20 years, but I've been selling wine for over 20 years.
I would never guess
And
that.
the simplicity of the ridge labels, that you can immediately recognize them.
Yes.
So even when you make a change like that, you can see the ridge label. You know you're going to get a great bottle of wine.
Right.
So thanks again for coming in.
Absolutely.
I really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Yeah,
this is
it's
fun.
good.
This is good.
That's good.
Yeah.